In a remarkable turn of events, China, Canada, and Mexico have come together to forge a new economic alliance, marking a significant shift in global trade dynamics. This unprecedented partnership emerges as a direct response to recent changes in U.S. trade policies, which have prompted these nations to seek alternative avenues for economic cooperation. The alliance not only underscores the adaptability of global markets, but also signals a potential rebalancing of economic influence on the world stage. For decades, the United States has played a central role in shaping international trade, but this development challenges its traditional leadership. The implications of this alliance are far-reaching, setting the stage for a new era in economic collaboration and competition. In recent years, Washington has implemented a series of tariffs targeting imports from several of its largest trading partners. These measures were primarily aimed at addressing trade imbalances and protecting domestic industries. In response, Canada, Mexico, and China acted swiftly, introducing their own tariffs on a range of American goods. This immediate and coordinated retaliation heightened tensions between the countries and disrupted established supply chains. The resulting trade disputes affected industries on both sides, leading to increased costs for businesses and consumers alike. These actions marked a significant shift in global trade dynamics, prompting ongoing negotiations and policy adjustments. Since the implementation of NAFTA, the North American economy has become increasingly integrated, with industries and supply chains stretching seamlessly across the borders of the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Manufacturers now routinely source components from multiple countries, assembling products in a collaborative process that leverages each nation's strengths. This interconnectedness has fostered economic growth and efficiency, but it also means that disruptions in one country can quickly ripple through the entire region. The automotive sector, for example, often sees parts cross borders several times before a vehicle is completed. Such interdependence underscores the importance of cooperation and coordinated policies among the three nations. As a result, the North American economy functions less as three separate markets and more as a unified production platform. The economic relationship between the United States and China is characterized by a high degree of mutual dependence. Both nations rely on each other for trade, investment, and access to vital markets. While the United States often views itself as the dominant partner, this perception overlooks the complex interconnections that bind the two economies together. China is a major supplier of goods and a significant holder of U.S. debt, while American companies benefit from China's vast consumer base and manufacturing capabilities. The belief in unilateral American dominance fails to account for the leverage and influence that China also possesses. Ultimately, the stability and growth of both economies are closely linked, making cooperation and understanding essential for their continued prosperity. Tariffs are often portrayed as simple tools that can be wielded without consequence, but this is a misleading notion. In reality, imposing tariffs typically raises costs for domestic consumers and businesses, as imported goods become more expensive. The idea that trading partners would not respond or coordinate against the United States is also a misconception. History shows that other countries frequently retaliate by imposing their own tariffs or forming alliances to counteract U.S. measures. Such coordinated responses can amplify the economic impact, affecting exports and global supply chains. Ultimately, tariffs are far from cost-free and can trigger complex international reactions that undermine their intended benefits. The global economy is shaped by a complex web of interdependent relationships among nations. When one country adopts aggressive unilateral policies, acting in its own interest without regard for others, it often disrupts this delicate balance. Such actions can provoke coordinated responses from other countries, who may form alliances or implement countermeasures to protect their own economic interests. This dynamic underscores the importance of cooperation and negotiation in international trade and finance. Over time, repeated unilateral actions can erode trust and stability, making it harder for nations to work together on shared challenges. Ultimately, the structural realities of the global economy mean that no nation operates in isolation, and collective responses are a natural consequence of unilateral moves. After the United States announced new tariffs, a series of swift responses unfolded across the globe. Canada was among the first to react, imposing tariffs on a range of American goods, including steel, aluminum, and various consumer products. Mexico followed closely, targeting U.S. agricultural exports such as pork, cheese, and bourbon with its own set of tariffs. China, meanwhile, responded with tariffs on American soybeans, automobiles, and other key exports. Each country tailored its measures to exert economic pressure and signal its opposition to the U.S. policy. These retaliatory actions marked the beginning of a broader trade dispute, affecting industries and markets worldwide. The sequence of these measures underscored the interconnected nature of global trade and the far-reaching consequences of tariff decisions. The coordinated response from the international community has led to a significant shift in global alliances. The United States now finds itself increasingly isolated, as both neighboring countries and major competitors have united in opposition to its recent policies. This alignment has not only diminished America's influence on the world stage, but also fostered new partnerships among other nations. As these countries collaborate more closely, the U.S. faces greater challenges in advancing its interests. The long-term effects of this isolation could reshape diplomatic and economic relationships worldwide. The economic stakes for the United States in this context are significant. Disruptions to supply chains can lead to shortages of critical components, impacting manufacturing and technology sectors. Job losses may occur as companies adjust to changing market conditions or reduced export opportunities. The agricultural sector is particularly vulnerable, as exports often rely on stable international relationships and open markets. Any instability can result in decreased demand for American products abroad, affecting farmers and rural communities. These risks highlight the interconnected nature of the U.S. economy and the importance of maintaining resilient trade and supply networks. Canada and Mexico face significant existential threats, largely due to shifting geopolitical dynamics and economic pressures. These challenges create vulnerabilities that could impact their national security and long-term stability. For China, this situation presents unique strategic opportunities. By strengthening diplomatic and economic ties with both countries, China can expand its influence in North America. Additionally, increased cooperation in trade, technology, and infrastructure could help China secure vital resources and markets. This evolving landscape allows China to position itself as a key partner, potentially reshaping regional alliances and global power structures. Washington's response to the situation has been widely criticized as insufficient and lacking in strategic depth. Rather than addressing the core issues, policymakers have often projected an image of strength that does not align with the realities on the ground. This illusion of negotiating from a position of power can undermine credibility and weaken diplomatic efforts. By failing to adapt to changing circumstances and overestimating their leverage, officials risk missing opportunities for meaningful progress. Ultimately, a more nuanced and realistic approach may be necessary to achieve lasting solutions. Several critical shortcomings undermine the effectiveness of the U.S. strategy. First, there was a notable lack of preparation, leaving key challenges unaddressed from the outset. The absence of coordination with allies further weakened collective efforts and diminished the potential for unified action. Additionally, a fundamental misunderstanding of supply chains led to logistical bottlenecks and resource shortages. Perhaps most significantly, the strategy failed to include a clear exit plan, resulting in prolonged involvement without defined objectives or a path to resolution. These combined failures contributed to outcomes that fell short of initial goals. Strategic narcissism refers to a tendency in foreign policy where a nation prioritizes its own perspectives, interests, and assumptions, often overlooking the motivations and realities of other countries. This approach has been particularly evident in American foreign policy, where decisions are frequently shaped by how the United States views itself and its role in the world. Over time, This self-centered strategy can lead to misjudgments and missed opportunities for genuine engagement. As a result, American influence has sometimes waned, with allies and adversaries alike perceiving U.S. actions as disconnected from global realities. The collapse of American influence in certain regions can often be traced back to this failure to consider the broader international context. By focusing primarily on its own narrative, the United States has occasionally undermined its own objectives and credibility on the world stage. When a nation is perceived as a threat within the international system, other countries often respond by seeking to balance its power. This process, known as balancing, involves forming alliances, increasing military capabilities, or strengthening diplomatic ties to counteract the potential aggressor. Nations may work together through formal agreements or informal cooperation to deter hostile actions and maintain stability. The goal is to prevent any one state from dominating others, thereby preserving a balance of power. These responses can be seen throughout history as countries adapt to shifting threats and changing global dynamics. Ultimately, balancing serves as a mechanism to promote security and reduce the likelihood of conflict. China has approached the challenge of U.S. tariffs with a measured and sophisticated strategy. Rather than responding with immediate escalation, China has carefully assessed its options, seeking to minimize economic disruption. Part of this approach involves strengthening ties with other major trading partners, such as Canada and Mexico. By deepening economic cooperation with these countries, China aims to diversify its trade relationships and reduce reliance on the U.S. market. This outreach not only helps to offset the impact of tariffs, but also signals China's commitment to open markets and multilateral partnerships. Through these calculated moves, China demonstrates a preference for strategic engagement over confrontation. As global alliances evolve, Canada, Mexico, and China have found strength in collective resistance. By joining forces, these nations are able to counterbalance larger economic and political pressures, enhancing their bargaining power on the world stage. This cooperation allows them to share resources, coordinate strategies, and present a unified front in negotiations. For Canada and Mexico, working together with China opens access to new markets and technological advancements. China, in turn, benefits from diversified partnerships and reduced reliance on any single trading partner. Through these shifting alliances, each country gains strategic advantages that would be difficult to achieve independently. Time can be a powerful asset for America's competitors on the global stage. As the United States deliberates or delays action, other nations often seize the opportunity to develop alternative strategies and strengthen their own positions. This period allows them to invest in new technologies, forge strategic alliances, and expand their influence in key markets. Over time, these efforts can erode America's competitive advantage, making it more challenging to maintain leadership in critical areas. By capitalizing on moments of inaction, competitors can reshape the balance of power to their benefit. In the near future, we can expect to see an escalation of retaliatory tariffs between major trading partners. As countries respond to each other's trade measures, the cost of imported goods is likely to rise. This environment encourages businesses to reconsider their global strategies, prompting many to relocate supply chains in search of more stable or cost-effective regions. Such shifts, however, often come with increased operational expenses. Ultimately, these changes are passed down to consumers, resulting in higher prices for everyday products. The combined impact of these factors may lead to greater market volatility and uncertainty for both businesses and households. Looking ahead, the long-term outlook for American economic dominance appears increasingly uncertain. The gradual erosion of the United States' leadership in global markets is not solely the result of external competition, but is also shaped by internal decisions and policies. Factors such as political polarization, underinvestment in infrastructure, and inconsistent trade strategies have contributed to this self-inflicted decline. As other nations invest heavily in technology, education, and manufacturing, the U.S. risks falling behind if these challenges are not addressed. The future trajectory will depend largely on whether the country can adapt and implement reforms to restore its competitive edge. Without significant change, the fracturing of American economic influence may become a defining feature of the coming decades. History has shown that great powers often contribute to their own decline by inadvertently strengthening their adversaries. Through policies, alliances, or military interventions, these nations sometimes provide their rivals with the resources or opportunities needed to grow stronger. This pattern underscores the importance of strategic foresight and humility in international relations. When a dominant power underestimates the consequences of its actions, it can set the stage for a shift in the global balance. Ultimately, the lessons of the past remind us that the seeds of a great power's fall are often sown by its own hand. The central issue is no longer about whether the United States can retain its position as a global economic leader. Instead, the real question focuses on the extent of harm the country might impose on itself before meaningful policy adjustments are made. This shift in perspective highlights concerns over internal decisions and their consequences. Rather than external threats, it is domestic choices that now pose the greatest risk to America's economic standing. The outcome will largely depend on how quickly and effectively policymakers respond to these challenges. The alliance of three nations standing together against the United States marks a pivotal moment in modern history. Such unity among former rivals signals a shift in global dynamics, challenging established power structures. This unprecedented cooperation underscores the complexity of international relations in today's world. For the United States, these developments highlight the urgent need for strategic wisdom and adaptability. Navigating this new landscape will require careful diplomacy, foresight, and a clear understanding of both allies and adversaries. The choices made now will shape the nation's future role on the world stage. There is a Turkish proverb that says, "The fish rots from the head." This vivid metaphor suggests that when leadership is flawed or corrupt, the effects inevitably spread throughout the entire organization or society. In the context of American leadership today, this proverb serves as a powerful reminder of how the actions and decisions at the top can shape the nation's direction and well-being. When those in charge fail to act with integrity or vision, the consequences are felt by everyone. Trust erodes, institutions weaken, and the collective spirit suffers. Ultimately, the health of a nation often mirrors the character and competence of its leaders. Public reactions to recent events have been both varied and passionate, reflecting the diverse perspectives found across Canada and the United States. Many citizens have taken to social media and community forums to share their thoughts, offering a wide range of opinions and insights. Some individuals express strong support for the decisions being made, citing benefits to their communities and national interests. Others voice concerns or skepticism, questioning the potential impacts and long-term consequences. This mix of viewpoints highlights the complexity of public sentiment and underscores the importance of open dialogue. By examining these reactions, we gain a deeper understanding of how different groups interpret and respond to current developments. Throughout history, Canadians have often expressed frustration with U.S. economic policies that seem to prioritize American interests at the expense of their northern neighbor. Trade disputes, such as those over softwood lumber and dairy, have fueled a sense of injustice and economic vulnerability in Canada. Many Canadians view sudden policy shifts or tariffs as betrayals, especially when they disrupt long-standing agreements or threaten vital industries. These actions can strain the close relationship between the two countries, leading to public outcry and calls for a more assertive Canadian response. The perception of being overlooked or undervalued by American leadership continues to shape Canadian attitudes toward cross-border cooperation. American political polarization has become increasingly evident, not just within domestic debates, but also in the way it shapes the country's international relationships. Public comments often reveal deep divisions in how Americans perceive foreign policy, alliances, and global cooperation. These differing viewpoints can influence the nation's stance on critical issues. from trade agreements to climate initiatives. As polarized opinions filter into public discourse, they sometimes complicate diplomatic efforts and create uncertainty for international partners. The resulting environment can make it challenging for the United States to present a unified front on the world stage. Ultimately, the internal divide has significant implications for how America is viewed and how it engages with other nations. As China's global influence continues to expand, many of America's long-standing allies find themselves at a crossroads. Economic partnerships with China offer significant opportunities, but they also raise concerns about dependency and shifting power dynamics. These nations must carefully weigh the benefits of closer ties with Beijing against the risks of straining their historic relationships with the United States. The dilemma is further complicated by issues such as security commitments, technological competition, and differing political values. Navigating this complex landscape requires delicate diplomacy and strategic foresight. Ultimately, America's allies are challenged to balance their national interests while maintaining stability in an evolving international order. The debate over trade deficits and economic nationalism has been a central theme in U.S. economic policy discussions. Critics of trade deficits argue that persistent imbalances can undermine domestic industries and lead to job losses, fueling calls for protective measures. Proponents of economic nationalism advocate for policies that prioritize domestic production and safeguard national interests, often through tariffs or renegotiated trade agreements. Supporters of free trade, however, contend that deficits are not inherently harmful and may reflect strong consumer demand or investment flows. The rationale behind recent U.S. trade reform efforts often centers on addressing perceived unfair practices by trading partners and restoring competitive balance. These reforms aim to protect strategic industries, reduce reliance on foreign supply chains, and promote fairer market access. Ultimately, the debate reflects broader concerns about economic security, global competitiveness, and the evolving role of the United States in the world economy. The argument that free trade has harmed the U.S. economy often centers on concerns about job losses, wage stagnation, and the decline of certain manufacturing sectors. Critics point to the outsourcing of jobs and the closure of factories as evidence that open markets have disadvantaged American workers. However, proponents of economic integration argue that free trade has brought significant benefits, such as lower consumer prices, increased market access for U.S. businesses, and greater overall economic growth. They emphasize that while some industries have faced challenges, others have expanded and innovated due to global competition. Additionally, supporters highlight that economic integration fosters international cooperation and can lead to higher standards of living. Ultimately, the debate reflects differing perspectives on how the gains and losses from trade are distributed across the economy. Economic isolationism, while intended to protect domestic industries, can carry significant risks for a nation's prosperity and security. By limiting trade and reducing engagement with global markets, the United States could face higher costs for goods, fewer choices for consumers, and slower economic growth. Isolationism may also hinder innovation, as collaboration and competition with international partners often drive technological advancement. Furthermore, withdrawing from global economic networks can weaken diplomatic ties, making it more challenging to address shared security concerns. Over time, these consequences could erode America's influence on the world stage and diminish its ability to shape international norms. Ultimately, embracing openness and cooperation has historically contributed to American strength and resilience. Some argue that voicing criticism of U.S. policy does not automatically equate to supporting China or any other foreign power. Instead, such criticism can be seen as an exercise in national self-interest, aimed at ensuring that policies truly reflect the best interests of the country. Open debate and constructive feedback are fundamental to a healthy democracy. By questioning and evaluating government actions, citizens and experts alike contribute to more effective and accountable governance. This perspective emphasizes that patriotism can involve holding leaders to high standards, rather than offering unquestioning support. Canada and Mexico often find themselves balancing their close economic and geographic ties to the United States with the uncertainties that come from shifting American policies. This unpredictability can complicate trade agreements, security partnerships, and diplomatic relations. At the same time, both countries are increasingly engaging with other global powers, such as China and the European Union, to diversify their economic and political alliances. Navigating these complex relationships requires careful diplomacy and strategic decision-making. The challenge lies in maintaining strong connections with the United States while also protecting their own national interests on the world stage. As global dynamics continue to evolve, Canada and Mexico must remain adaptable and forward-thinking in their approach. The broader implications for global economic stability are significant, as shifts in economic power can influence international markets, trade relationships, and financial systems. Emerging economies may challenge established leaders, prompting adjustments in global governance and economic policy. This evolving balance of power can lead to both opportunities and uncertainties as nations adapt to new roles and responsibilities. Increased competition may drive innovation and growth, but it can also heighten tensions and create volatility. Ultimately, how countries navigate these changes will shape the future of global cooperation and economic resilience. This episode highlights several key lessons for policymakers. It underscores the necessity of anticipating emerging challenges and adapting strategies proactively, rather than reacting to crises as they unfold. Strategic foresight allows leaders to identify potential risks and opportunities, enabling more resilient and effective policy decisions. By integrating long-term thinking into their planning processes, policymakers can better safeguard public interests and navigate complex, rapidly changing environments. Ultimately, embracing strategic foresight is essential for building adaptive governance systems that are prepared for the uncertainties of the future. As we look ahead, the future of international economic relations remains uncertain, shaped by both long-standing challenges and emerging opportunities. While global tensions and protectionist policies have strained cooperation in recent years, there are also signs of renewed dialogue and collaborative efforts among nations. Technological advancements and shared concerns, such as climate change, may encourage countries to find common ground. However, persistent inequalities and differing national interests could deepen divisions if not carefully managed. Ultimately, the direction of international economic relations will depend on the willingness of governments and institutions to prioritize mutual benefit over short-term gains. The coming years will reveal whether the world moves toward greater unity or further fragmentation.